It's Sunday, July 14th, 2024, 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And you're watching Caught for Two, broadcasting live from Champaign, Illinois. We're here to play or read the third of four letters in the latest Dear Holmes case called the Murano Man. Before we get started, let me check in with the chat, see how everyone's doing. We'll catch up a little bit on some bookkeeping, and then we'll get started. Yesterday afternoon, we had an unusual afternoon session and played a cold case game by a company called Cold Case Crackers. Couple hiccups, not my favorite game, not as good as the previous Cold Case Crackers game we've played, but reasonable. And then offline, I finally recorded 5 small reviews of games we've played over the last month or so. I think they may all be behind me there. Cold Case End of the Line, Dead on the Vine, Missing in the Caribbean, Body of Evidence, and Guilty. I recorded and edited those and uploaded them. They will go live over the next 5 days while I'm away in Florida in 100-degree heat visiting my family. If you are a supporter of the Patreon, you'll see a link so that you could watch those now early. For the rest of you, they'll be coming out this week. Okay, what else do we need to talk about? Anything else? Anyone up to any interesting projects before we get started? I can tell whenever I have to travel, I start to get a short temper. I don't get short-tempered with people, but everything frustrates me. Like the refrigerator door won't close right or whatever. Something gets spilled. I just have a very short fuse for frustration, and that even if I don't feel like I'm getting anxious or unhappy about something, my actions betray it. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, if no one has any projects they want to talk about, let's do a very quick recap, not of our whole case, but just of our last letter. Now, remember that with these new Dear Holmes cases, you only get 3 letters, and then the 4th letter is the solution from Holmes. So today will be our final letter exploring the case before Holmes gives us our solution. And I feel like the chat has zeroed in. I feel fairly confident that we've zeroed in on this. What would you call it? Not the, well, sort of the theme, but the idea of glass as being the through line through all this. And our murdered guy, who was in some sort of spycraft type business with the Italians, he was a glass blower, and he seems to be making these musical glass items for some reason, either to secretly carry messages or for explosives. It's not quite clear. But the channel very early on picked up on a cryptic message which was here, think aged but not wine. The channel quickly picked up that AGED are musical instruments, and we saw a couple signs of him making musical glass stuff. And in the last letter, that became very explicit. We go to his house, we see he's reading books on resonance of glass, and we find a book on the glass harmonica, which it looked like he was making. And he sees a particular piece of music by Mozart, 1791 Adagio for the glass harmonica. And we get this little note about how our agent, was looking around for the glass harmonica, didn't find it, but did find the Stradivarius violin that this guy did play. And the channel the audience picked up that Stradivarius is an Antonio Stradivarius, which is what their secret message said. Ask Antonio S. about it. So we think it may be a sign that you have to play the violin to trigger something. Maybe those specific notes, A, G, E, D, to cause glass to break, something like that. We search his room. It doesn't look like it's been tossed, but we do find a diary. He's got writing in the back of the book, a list called CS. I speculated that might be confidential sources. Here are the ones from this year. We know he was meeting with a someone K. We don't know what these numbers mean. These are the 4 from this year, although it's a long list. As we're leaving, we see the guy who runs the foundry. And he says, oh, so you ran into that guy I've been following. And we say, what are you talking about? And he says, the German fella, he was sneaking around the office of our dead guy, and I followed him here, but now he freaked out, and so I'm going back. And he says he was German and something wrong with his leg. All very believable, although I raised the possibility that this would be a kind of thing that a spy would do if he got caught where he shouldn't be. Like, this guy has been caught trying to go into this guy's house. Has he just come up with a story like, oh, I was following someone here, I'm on your side? I think probably that's not the case, but I really do like that idea. Then we go back to the glass place, and all the green ampules, the thin tubes that we were so interested in, they're all shattered. They're all broken, look like someone smashed them up or stole them. And we talked to the guy who runs the forge, the same guy we set here. He says, this place has been locked up tight. No one got in. And we hypothesized that maybe someone has caused them to break by playing the music, the sound that makes them resonate and break. And that's our whole theory about what's happening with these glasses. Originally, my theory was that they were being put in wine to hold secret messages. But now that we've got this detonation, I had an alternate theory. My alternate theory was that maybe you could poison people by putting poison in the wine, and then when you play that music, special sounds, the glass breaks inside, releasing the poison. But it seems like it would be easier to just poison the wine if you have access to their wine. So, but maybe explosives, if you pack in a bottle of wine, like an epoxy, 2 parts. Lots of explosives are 2 parts. And so you could separate them in a glass tube, and then when you break the sound of it, when you break the glass, the 2 parts mix and explode. So it would be a good way to sneak in explosives. But then why would our guy be working on that? He's the good guy. He's not the explosive person. Although he did stop some anarchists from explosion. Maybe he's just testing theories. Then this agent goes around asking about Antonio, though we think it's Antonio Stradivarius. We hear about who might have thrown the paint on his building, being related to some local hoods that he's getting in arguments with, nothing important. We start asking about number 294. I forget where we heard 294. We heard it somewhere, I guess. In one of the letters, he mentions the number 294. So we're not exactly sure what that's about. But we're asking wine merchants about it. He doesn't know, but he says there's this other wine merchant you should talk to, which our agent is going to try to do in this current letter. And then he tells us he's run into some trouble. Our dead guy ran into some trouble with some local mafia family. We go visit that guy, and we get told that our dead guy met this girl. They slept together. The girl got pregnant. When she went to try to marry him, she noticed he had a wedding ring, and the father got all angry, and they all got angry. And our agent says, who's a friend of the dead guy, he wasn't married. He just wore his father's wedding ring. So all misunderstanding, it seems. Then lastly, what happens? Okay, we go to the telegraph office because we know our dead guy just sent this agent, a friend of his, a telegraph right before he died. When we go to investigate it, we get told that our dead guy was very nervous, insisted that the telegraphs be transcribed and sent directly. And then when we talk to the kid that delivered him, it turns out he actually delivered two. That our dead guy was very interested in getting two telegrams out right away. And we go and we check out where the other one went. And it went to the South Place Chapel, which is currently closed, but we can see a sign about Southwest African emissaries or colonial emissaries, whatever. One of them's named Carl Vetter. So our guy makes the connection. Hey, isn't it interesting that the place where the telegraph went is the colonial South African stuff where our dead guy was due to deliver some intelligence about right before he died. And one of the people mentioned is a Carl Vetter, and we are looking for a K who's got information about the colonial African powers. So have I missed anything in my recap? Anything important to talk about that the audience think I'm missing? I did bring up Mozart's 1791 Adagio. Mozart died in 1791, it seems, but we can listen to the glass harmonica composed by Mozart in 1791. Let's try to listen to it. Hopefully this audio will come through. Can you hear this? Can everyone hear this? I mean, I wouldn't say it's my favorite instrument. Let's see, I did try. Let me see if I have someone actually playing a glass harmonica that we could look at. This. Of course, YouTube will demonetize all this, but we don't care about that. It's not monetized anyway. So let's see if we can get a look at a glass harmonica. Is this what a glass harmonica looked like? I had some impression of a sort of a lazy Susan with glasses that were filled with water that you rub your hands on. This looks like a piano. But he is playing it like he's running his fingers on top of it. So you can see them spinning. You can see the things spinning inside that. How weird. Okay. I can't say that I would be too happy if I lived with someone constantly playing that thing. All right. Well, if no one has anything to add, I guess we'll open our letter and read it. Wasn't there a tuning fork? Is there a tuning fork when you play it or just when you tune it and make the glass? We didn't really get a good look at how it was made. It might be nice to have maybe next week's session, we'll have a video showing the insides of it. Showing someone disassembling it so we can see how it really works. Uh, Melissa says it was rumored to cause people to go insane. I believe it. All right, let's go through our letter here. But looks like it's our agent, Enrico Osali, writing to us again, 10 of August. Dear Mr. Holmes, I'm grateful for your telegram. With your keen suggestions, I was able to make strides in our investigation of Breccia's death, though I am afraid much remains shrouded in mystery. My day began with brief journeys to Carlo Lombardi's shop in Clerkenwell and to the South Place Chapel. I never would have imagined it would end with the discovery of a burglary at Alfonso's home. Needless to say, I have learned much. As it is the 10th of August and Carlo Lombardi's store was scheduled to open again, my first port of call was Clerkenwell. I hailed a cab to the wine merchant's shop at 6 in the morning, and I arrived just as a bright-eyed young man opened its doors. He placed a fancifully decorated brick at the foot of each one, ensuring they remained wide open, and then hastened back inside. I followed. The premises are quite a grand affair. There are large windows to each side of the doors, such that all of the wine merchant's wares are displayed to the public. As I entered, my presence was announced by the boy who had opened the doors. Now sorting bottles behind the store counter, he sounded a small brass bell as he sang "Benvenuto" and continued to work. Behind him were cases of wine, all labeled Toscana, and all around me were displays of bottles. With every step taken, I could hear the rattle of a bottle rack which stretched floor to ceiling across one of the room's walls. At the far end of the shop was a piano. I began by asking the young man the same question in English that I first posed to Signor Fratelli. "Good morning. May I speak with Antonio, please?" The young man laughed, replying in perfect English, "I am Antonio, sir, Antonio Kemp. How can I be of service?" I, too, found myself compelled to laughter, thinking that I had made progress. I then asked for bottle 294, but the boy only said, "Pardon me?" He did not know of any wine or bottle number 294. When I questioned if perhaps the number referred to a case or a select section of their bottle rack, Antonio slowly shook his head. "I'm sorry, sir. We sell our wines by variety or by their particular producer, also by vintage or by specific region, but Signor Lombardi does not number his wines." Indubitably, Mr. Holmes, I felt cast down on hearing this, but my visit to the store was not in vain. My subsequent conversation with Signor Lombardi was informative, and in addition to this, young Antonio was able to make a contribution to our investigation before I left Lombardi's store. After interviewing the lad, I asked to speak with Signor Lombardi. He promptly dashed off, crying in Italian, "Signor, there is a gentleman here for you," and returned to his work at the counter. Within moments, a florid, well-dressed figure was towering over me, mopping his brow. "Good morning, sir. How may I help you?" "Good morning, Signor Lombardi. My name is Enrico Frosali. I am a representative of the Italian embassy. A friend of mine, Alfonso Breccia, was a customer of yours, I believe." The wine merchant's face wrinkled. "Has he gone somewhere? I delivered a case to his foundry 2 weeks ago, just before leaving for my brother's in Belfast. I took the wine myself so he would not be left thirsty while I was away. I would hope he did not forget. I paid him good money that day, too, for a set of glasses for my mother." He noticed my expression and stopped speaking. I drew a long breath and informed him of Breccia's present state. He faltered as the grave import of my words dawned upon him. "Ah, no. He seems so healthy. Was it an accident at the foundry?" I shook my head. Lombardi staggered and grasped the edge of the counter for support as I continued. "It is his death I am investigating. Is there somewhere more private where we might talk?" Lombardi gestured for me to follow. "See, this way, Inspectore." He led me through a narrow passageway, then down stone steps into a large wood-clad office that was furnished with velvet-seated mahogany chairs and a walnut desk almost larger than my kitchen. Motioning me to be seated, he took a seat behind his desk and looked expectantly towards me. I began thus. I was sent a curious message by Alfonso. He had information which he thought most valuable to Italy, and it was, I believe, somehow related to a certain bottle of wine. The message seems to suggest I should ask Antonio for number 294. However, as your apprentice told me, your wine is not numbered. Lombardi nodded, then shrugged. I have a friend from the old country. Perhaps he knows something. His store is not far from here, Luigi Fratelli. You may tell him I sent you. I told Lombardi of my previous conversation with Fratelli, and he began to tap his thumb against his desk. Some moments later, he leant forward with a fire in his eyes and asked, How else can I be of service? Before I could answer, the peal of a bell pierced the air, and Antonio burst into the room. Signor, someone's here to pick up the embassy order. Signor Fratelli turned to him and asked, Mr. Schaefer? The boy shook his head. The gentleman who came last time. Fratelli sighed, then excused himself for a moment, leaving me with Antonio, who was eager to converse. Is that an important client? I hazarded. He thought for a second and said, Not sure why, but Signor Fratelli's wines have been popular, especially in St. James. We practically sell barrels of wine every month, just to our clients there. The Athenaeus Club, the German Embassy, the Travelers Club, sometimes the Reform Club. I stopped him. Then the man outside is from the German Embassy? He nodded. Normally, they send Mr. Schaefer to pick up orders, though I prefer the new man. He's more friendly, and sometimes he lingers and plays music on the piano. Mr. Schaefer would just pick up the wine and go, and he seemed odd. Signor Fratelli calls him the Jaw, but I see nothing wrong with his face. I was told it's his second name and a joke of sorts, because he walks unusually and doesn't like it when people point that out. I don't understand the joke or why the name doesn't seem to bother him. But, trailing off, Antonio turned to me with a look of determination. Inspector, I was thinking about what you said in the number 294, specifically. I believe we have one wine that you may want to inspect. You see, he grinned, it's called Due Nove Fiori, which means your 9 flowers in Italian. He then repeated himself once, Due Nove Fiori, and again more slowly, Due Nove Fiori. Do you hear it, Inspector? It sounds a bit like 294, no? This intrigued me. Could I purchase a bottle? I asked, and he set off to find one. Within the minute, it was Fratelli who had returned. My apologies, Ispettore. Regular client, he chuckled. The staff at the German embassy has a penchant for my wines. Now, please, as I mentioned, if there is anything at all I could do for you, or Mr. Breccia, or the investigation, you must let me know. I responded, anything that might come to mind when I mention the number 294, Signor? Your assistant, it appears, has one idea. If you've any others, they would be eagerly welcomed. At this, the proprietor fell silent, then shrugged. Nothing, Ispettore. We shook hands, and I thanked him, but he would not allow me to leave empty-handed. He led me out to the furthest corner of the shop before I left, and there he proudly presented me with a bottle, saying, a robust 1883 red that uses the Aglianico grape. It's quite rare. Grows exceptionally well in Campania and Basilicata. in the soil near volcanoes. Alfonso would have adored it. Yes, a fine wine to serve the needs of an Italian patriot. It was I who was then silent for a moment, remembering my friend. The spry Antonio ensured I left with a bottle of Tue Nuove Fiore as well, neither of which Lombardi allowed me to pay for, and I was sent on my way. I will note that I have not been able to detect anything extraordinary in or about the bottle. Its label is rather plain, merely featuring 9 simple black petals, the initials CF in blue ink, and the words Tue Nuove Fiore below that. Maybe someone can tell me how to pronounce that. It was near 8 in the morning when I later arrived at the chapel. On this occasion, my knocks were met by one Monsignore Daniel Conway, who, on hearing my name, could not help but laugh with relief. He graciously answered every query I could think to pose to him, and showed me the telegram that Breccia sent to him when he dispatched mine. I will transcribe the most relevant portions of our conversation below, including the man's explanation of the postponed lectures. And here's the transcript. All of us were enthusiastic about the lectures. Several members of Parliament and reporters, one from the Daily Telegraph even, had responded to invitations affirmatively, so we took great care in preparing a special reception. We'd arranged for cola nuts to be delivered in anticipation of Chief Maharero's arrival, and a gracious donor had offered to pay for a small concerto to be performed during the reception. Not only that, but the head baker at Rumpelmayer's had assured me she would personally deliver a number of their finest eclairs on the morning of the chief's lecture with Dr. Vedder. Then the telegram boy came to our door and handed this to me. On saying this, Monsignore Conway produced a wrinkled paper from his coat. The telegram read, Maharero and Vedder must not speak. Lives in peril, say nothing, cancel lectures, await EF. As I read this, he explained, I spoke at length with Reverend Thorne and my dear friend Professor Frederick Harrison about our best course of action, and we agreed it would be most prudent to err on the side of caution. Thus I informed all those participating in an official capacity that the event would be postponed due to issues with the window. I said to them, before vaguely promising that a new date would soon be established. This I also said to Mr. William, who was paying for the musical performance, and Rumpelmayer's. The former was deeply offended, angry to learn we had postponed the event, and the latter has said they're unable to promise any suites for a later date, as they have too many large orders to complete at the end of the month. We appended all of the advertisements out front after that, and well, I've been sat here since, praying, half in fear of my life. In addition to this, Monsignore Conway claims he does not know who Alfonso Breccia is, although upon questioning he was somewhat familiar with the famous glassmaker in Clerkenwell. I'm not the first person to come to the chapel since he received the telegram, but as I am the only one who has come with questions about the lecture, As a precaution, he has refrained from opening its doors at all past sundown, or when alone, since receiving Breccia's warning on the 31st of July. I have informed the police, who have assured me that the South Place Chapel will be monitored closely until we have deemed it free of danger, or this case has been drawn to a close. From there, I left to pay yet another visit to Alfonso's vacant home, only to find myself contacting the police again. Considering all I had gathered today, I hoped to observe something related to the lectures, if not 294 at the house. Instead, I discovered that it had been ransacked. Countless objects were thrown about, and beyond one thing, nothing substantial appeared to be missing. The one thing of note was Alfonso's journal, which had been left atop a pile of books and instruments that had been thrown to the ground. The journal's final pages had been torn out. which is to say the list of names I had previously observed was nowhere to be found. Taking the journal with me this time, I called for the police and then hurried to the Phoenix Brass Foundry, where I searched Alfonso's shop meticulously and found evidence pertaining to the CS. Finally found evidence pertaining to the CS, or Commissioni Speciali list, formerly found in his journal. As you may have surmised, this list appears to have been a record of his clienti e commissioni speciali, that is, special clients and commissions. I found a list more detailed and titled as such in a small leather-bound book behind his counter at the shop, and indeed it contained information on his most recent special clients, which I've named for you in my last letter. The list was organized into rectangles, each filled with comments regarding the client and or their commissioned price or pieces. According to the notes, Raffaella Marina requested a serpent made of deep blue and violet glass, able to hold flowers. Her commission was received on January 7, completed on January 22nd, and dispatched to a house near Covent Garden on January 27. Heinrich Bauer commissioned 2 glass bouquets, at least 6 colors, no green in either, on January 20th, which were completed on February 10th, dispatched to a flat in Clerkenwell on February 14th. He commissioned a 3rd bouquet, no blue or red, on March 2nd, which was completed and dispatched on March 12th. Wilhelm Klein commissioned no less than 20 glass ampules, no larger than the palm of one's hand, on June 30th. This commission was marked as completed, but does not bear a date, nor does it appear to have been dispatched. It was intended for an address in a Covent Garden, a building owned by the German embassy, and there were additional notes regarding the client's request. Glass must withstand particular range of frequencies. Awaiting further detail from client. Client wishes to observe the creation process. Interested in glass making. Project completion no later than July 31st. Carlo Esposito commissioned 3 large bowls shaped like enormous flowers on July 2nd. These were completed and dispatched to a house near Trafalgar Square on July 24th. This client had several specifications listed as well, namely that their wife would most prefer an orchid, a crocus, and a chrysanthemum. I did not locate any other items of significance at the shop, and the neighboring workers seemed occupied with a guest, so I returned home after discovering the list. Approaching my doorstep, a further mystery revealed itself to me. A small rectangular parcel, tightly wrapped in brown paper and secured with stout hemp twine, and a glass seal on a metal clasp. I immediately knew that it could only have come from one man, yet the postmark was dated from the 9th of August. This was explained by a note tucked under the twine, stating that the parcel had been left ready to post at the house on St. John's Street about 10 days ago. However, it had been accidentally misplaced at the post office. It was found this week and finally delivered to me today. With my stiletto, I rapidly removed the brown paper to reveal a wooden box which might have accommodated a single bottle of wine. I carefully lifted the lid, removed the top layer of straw, and found not 1, but 6 complete and most brilliant green glass ampules, akin to those in Alfonso's shop. Each one of the ampules was double-ended and had been formed from a tube of dark green glass. They were all the same length, measuring barely 3 inches. But the glass seemed to differ in thickness. Holding them one by one up to the light, I could see that they each contained shreds of something. Mr. Holmes, I swear to you, I handled these ampules with the utmost delicacy. In fact, they were lying still in their case as I contemplated what secrets they might hold. Nevertheless, 3 of them shattered of their own accord. The case of ampules was sat by my feet when this happened, as I sat at my typewriter producing this letter. Not 10 minutes had passed since I had inspected the ampules and gently placed them back within their case. Since then, all I had done was walk to my phonograph across the room, wind it up, and return to my table to write. I did so undisturbed for some time, listening to the music, during which time I did sense a quiet, occasional rattle coming from the case at my feet. I attributed this to my own careless tapping on the floor until the song's final resolution was followed at once by the sound of glass shattering. I looked down into the case and was shocked to see shards of glass everywhere. I could smell a sweet aroma emanating from within, and there were bits of paper scattered amongst the bits of glass. I carefully removed the papers from the box, but have made nothing of it. Each scrap has but one letter written upon it. These are the letters I collected from the box. As for the record I was listening to, unbelievably, it was a gift I received from Alfonso at the start of this year, one of Dvorak's latest symphonies from the New World. This I know I should interpret as nothing beyond coincidence, but I cannot refrain from considering it a sign from Alfonso. The song may be key to understanding the ampule's letters. Mr. Holmes, I await your counsel. I will endeavor to ensure the rest of the ampules remain undisturbed as I investigate, but I'm growing less certain of how to proceed. I remain, meanwhile, yours sincerely, Ennio Fossali. P.S. An additional 2 items to report, both received at the embassy before I posted this letter. First, a telegram was received from the office of the coroner. You will find it explains some of what I learned today. Second, a crudely written note which was left for me by Alfred Grimes. I will transcribe it on the opposite side of this page and know that I plan to meet Grimes post haste. Okay, and here are the telegrams, or what are these? Regarding Alfonso Breccia, 2 written messages have been discovered within, this is the report. 2 written messages have been discovered within the trousers of the deceased while preparing garments for disposal. A small pocket discreetly sewn into the left leg was found. Inside it were 2 messages written in ink. Number 1, dated July 31st, 1894. Mio fratello, I am afraid you may not hear from me for some time, but you will receive word from me soon. This will lead you to K. Once you've received everything, go to the South Place Chapel. The rest will be plain to see. Act with haste and protect yourself. I will attempt to do the same. And then message number 2, dated the same day. K. You have done a great service, but safety is paramount as I take action. We should not meet again for some time. I am grateful for our talks. You are welcome to inspect these messages at your earliest convenience. Our office expects to hear from you soon in any case. Okay. Then we've got one more page to read. Inspector Forsali. So what are we reading now? It would have been helpful if it was on different font or something. I posted this letter. He got a telegram from the coroner. So this is the coroner's talking about the notes they found. Second, a crudely written note was left by Alfred Grimes. I guess that's what we're reading here. Letter from Alfred Grimes. Inspector Forsali, you know things are not as they ought to be when you find me putting my thoughts onto paper. I haven't a clue what you lot have been up to with your investigation, but I'm no fool. I've talked to some folks, I've learned some things, and I think I may have found your criminals. Yes, more than one. And you'll be pleased to know they're both within reach. You must investigate Arturo Vincenza thoroughly. Disregarding him is a grave mistake. The man has been threatening Breccia for weeks now, if not months. I know that the man has never done anything to Breccia, but he has left several outraged notes at our door, and he's come to the foundry more than once to shout obscenities at him. Might as well be a regular. Last time was around the beginning of July. I could hear them in the shop arguing with each other. Vincenzo was threatening to break all of your friend's precious glass toys. There was an instance just a week or so ago. I was at the tavern, the Apple Tree. Arturo Vincenzo was there too, talking to his mates and loudly. He spoke freely, constantly about Breccia and the fury he felt towards him. I had not considered this when I first spoke with you, but I can recall Vincenzo boasting at the time, saying something akin to, Breccia should hope I don't change my mind. He's lucky Sophia and Luisa have good hearts. Naturally, my instincts tell me that Vincenza is the one who attacked our friend. How, I know not. However, I do believe that Vincenza paid someone to assist him, a German. I told you when I saw you at Breccia's house, there was a fellow skulking about, and that I'd seen him talking with Breccia once before. Well, it so happens that the fool chose to come by the foundry again late last evening, trying to take advantage of the shop he assumed would be vacant. Of course, I stepped out when I saw him and caught him by the arm before he could skip off. He implored me to release him, weeping, and I did. I won't be one to break the law, but not before encouraging him to answer some of my questions. I'm no detective, Rosali, but it looks to me like he could have informed Vincenzo of Breccia's whereabouts or his itinerary or something the like, such that Vincenzo would be able to corner him without a chance of somebody interrupting. Here are my observations alongside his claims. 1, his name is Theo Schaefer. He's an assistant secretary at the German embassy. 2, he says he was a good friend of Mr. Breccia, was wondering if I'd seen him recently, vehemently denies knowing Vincenzo. A lie, I suspect. 3, says he met Breccia a year ago when picking up wine at his shop in Clerkenwell. They shared a friendship over their affinity for the arts. Our interaction became most interesting once I told him what happened to his friend. He suddenly began to sob and repeat, "This can't be my fault." He was truly in a state of distress. I figure he must have not known what he was doing or how he was helping Vincenzo. He was inconsolable, and for my part, I could only think of the fact it was in my best interest to keep him close by. So I made him tea, and when he quieted down, I offered to let him stay at the foundry with me temporarily. I was shocked when he accepted the offer. This may have been foolish of me, but he's half my weight, and he can't walk right. I won't fear him. I'll be at the foundry with him as long as I'm able, but would appreciate your intervention. If I have yet to receive word from you and he insists on departing, I will send for police and follow him closely. Well, boy, a lot in that letter. Let's see what the chat thinks of all this. We'll turn on the air conditioner. Marlene is talking about tuning violin strings to 294. I'm not sure how that helps us. Okay, well, let's file these away and think about them. I feel like maybe this, because of there seems to be a kind of reconstructed code for us. We may be working on this. Why does it look like I'm so low down on this view? We may be working on this offline. So if you don't know, there is a Discord for this channel. And sometimes if we play a case in multiple parts, we'll discuss it on the Discord. There is a channel on the Discord for Dear Holmes cases. So if we end this and you want to talk about the case and any theories you have before the next session, you can check out the Discord. There's a link on this YouTube page. All right, let's go highlight anything we see that is of significance. All right, where does he go first? He goes to the wine shop. It's a very fancy wine shop. This is the second wine shop. Remember, there were 2 cases of wine in our dead glass blowers workshop. This was the second one. Very fancy. There's a piano there, which catches our attention because there's a bunch of music going on. He does the same thing where he asks for Antonio. This time, this guy's like, yeah, that's me, but I'm not the right Antonio because we're looking for Antonio S, which we think is Stradivarius. Okay. So we ask about 294. He says he doesn't know what that is. Then this guy brings us downstairs where he looks like this guy might be involved in some mafia stuff. He's got like some super, looks like it's like described as a scene from The Godfather, his office there, his chair, his desk. We ask him about it and he says, what does he say? We ask him about the 294 wine and stuff, and he says maybe you should talk to Fratelli, the other wine merchant. We say that's where we came from. He didn't have any information. He sent us to you. And then he says, how else can I be of service? He looks like he's nervous. He's trying to get rid of us, and he's nervous. I'm a little bit suspicious of this guy. And then the kid comes in and says, someone's here to pick up the embassy order. And he says, well, is it Mr. Schaefer, the normal guy from the embassy? And he says, no, it's the guy from last time. And he describes a guy that sounds like the guy who was trying to get into the guy's house, we're told. A guy from the German embassy with a limp, right? And he says, their wine is very popular in the area. Travelers Club, Reform Club, the Athenaeum Club. I wonder if, did we hear about any of these in our first letter? I'm thinking about the anarchist groups. But this guy, normally Mr. Schaefer is the guy he likes who plays the piano. This new guy is odd. He's called the Jaw. That's his nickname. Although his face looks okay, but he walks unusually, which is what our guy Grimes said a German guy he had followed from the shop to the house. So we're very suspicious of this guy who's come to pick up the wine. And then the kid says, I have a theory about your 294. There's a wine that sounds like 294. I'm going to get you a bottle. He brings us a bottle. The other guy, let's see. The other guy comes back and he's got nothing helpful for us. He says, I can't help you. And we leave. He gives us free wine, but he has no help for us. Okay, then we go back to the house, and it's been ransacked. Everything's been thrown around. They took the pages at the back of his diary, which we now know is for his custom orders. We go and search his office and we find a duplicate set of records about his CS, his commission clients. And we get told about these clients, of which one really stands out. First of all, it's Klein, that's a K, but there's the client that wants the ampules. 3 inches long. It's got a specific date. That sounds like maybe the date. Now this got me thinking that the explosion idea is right. That this person is trying to commission glass that they can use to make explosives. Explosives that they're going to ship in wine, play some music which is going to cause it to explode. That's my theory. And then the other two are just decoys, I think. But that's the one. Wilhelm Klein. Intended for an address in Convent Garden. Building owned by the German embassy. There's our German embassy again. July 31st. I'm wondering what was the scheduled lecture? When was the lecture scheduled for at the chapel? Coming lectures this coming week. He delivered a telegram on the 31st of July. So, yes, I believe these lectures were scheduled for the 31st of July. We're told in today's letter that the telegram he sent to these people said, call it off immediately. You cannot go through with the lecture. It's too dangerous. And that's why this order for glass was due by the 31st. So I think they were planning on using these glass for a two-part explosive liquid. They were going to deliver the glass, have the music played. When the specific notes went off, it would explode and kill the people giving this lecture. That is the idea. And here is our client. So this is, whether this is the person's real name or not, I don't know. But this is our client building the bomb to plan. William Klein, which was what, there's the other, that's when he came in to commission it. He's R9, don't know what that means. Klein sounds like it could be German. Okay, so now we think we have the person who hired to produce the glass. We think the glass is meant for a bomb. And we think that our guy has figured it out, our guy that got murdered. So the guy that got murdered has figured out, hasn't delivered it. Here we see where he hasn't actually delivered the finished product. He finished making them, but maybe maybe their plan is to kill him so he can't tell, or he figured it out and he's been trying to contact the Italian embassy and this guy found out, and so they've killed him to keep him quiet. Okay, then what happens here is that we get a box of wine. Our agent, who's friend with the deceased, gets a box of wine that was delayed in the mail. And in the wine, he can see is some secret information, some secret strips of letters, and a weird smell. I don't really understand that, but buried in ampules. Ampules are a couple inches long, dark green glass, which would be good to hide inside a bottle of wine. 3 inches long, these little ampules. All right. And I wonder if I put this in backwards. Oh, that's problematic. Did anyone try to catch me? Where is my... All right, well, this I put in backwards. There's no good way to solve it. So this came first. He gives us a bottle of wine. He arrives at the chapel. We hear about the postponed lectures and the telegram that said it must be postponed immediately. Lives are in danger. So that's what I was just saying there. Okay. And then there's a note here. Let's see. They were going to have a special reception. Several members of parliament were going to be there. So this does seem like maybe this might have been an anarchist thing. And then in addition to the chief of this colonial African thing. And a gracious donor had offered to pay for a concerto. So that sounds like part of the plan to blow up these wine bottles and kill everyone. Not only that, the baker doesn't seem involved. There's our telegram saying stop it. He talked and they agreed to postpone the lecture, which they did. And he's just walking around afraid now. Then this guy goes to the house, which is where we get the rest of this. Ransacked, found the records. Okay, so, and what the dead guy has sent to his friend is the ampules, like sample ampules. Or not sample, there was stuff in them, right? And then while the guy is listening to music, let's see, has that happened yet? No, there's a whole side issue about boy, I just put these in all. No. All in backwards. Okay, so here we are. He looks at them, he notices there's something in them, and he starts listening to music and they break. Again, it's our theory that the music can break the glass. He tells us what song he was listening to and thinks maybe that's important. It doesn't feel like it is. He's listening to this big, long record. At the end of the record, they broke. They just happened to hit the right notes. But when they did break, he smelled a sweet aroma. Maybe it's not explosive. Maybe it's poison gas or something. Anyway, I'm not sure what. I mean, obviously, our guy didn't send his friend poison, so I'm not sure what aroma they're smelling here. But slips of paper came out of the ampules. Each scrap had one letter written upon it. So these feel like they're going to spell out a message. We'll see if anyone can come up with that message ahead of time here. Before we move along, it could be in Italian for all we know. If not, we'll take it offline. And then he tells us what song he was listening to that broke the glasses. To me, I feel like that's not going to be important, but I could be wrong. I'll endeavor to ensure the rest of the ampules remain undisturbed. So, is it only some of them broke? And so we should imagine this is missing letters from the ones that didn't break? I'm a little bit confused. He says only 6, and they're packed with lots of different notes. All right. Then he tells us about the coroner's telegram. How 2 notes were found on the body, secretly sewed into garment. This is spycraft again. The first one, remember, this is July 31st. This is the day he sent his last telegrams right before he died. You will receive word from me soon. So he's talking to one of the wine merchants. Is that right? You will receive word from me soon. This will lead you to K. Once you've received everything, go to the South Place Chapel. The rest will be plain to see. So Fratello was the first wine guy, not the second one. Act with haste and protect yourself. I will do the same. So these were notes he was planning to deliver, but was killed beforehand, I guess. Or is this a note to him? Mio Fratello. Can someone say, is that someone's name or is that a word for like my friend? Is it a note to him that he's hidden or a note that he's planning on sending? This one says, K, you have done a great service, but safety is paramount as I take action. We should not meet again for some time. I am grateful for our talks. Well, we're told that our guy that died had a contact named K who's giving him information. So it feels like he is getting information from this K. Maybe this was a note he intended to give to him, but he was killed before he could. And then Grimes, the guy who works at the foundry, I feel like he's another spy. I feel like it's going to turn out that Grimes is going to be a different government agent, maybe British or American. And he's writing us to tell us he's learned some things. And I think he says, or maybe he's in on this all, he says, you got to focus on the tough guy, Vicenza, whose daughter got pregnant. I think he's involved in this. But this suggests to us that this guy is not purely trying to deceive us, because he points us to that German that he saw trying to sneak in. So now I don't think he's lying. I just think he's wrong. He says, hey, I saw that German guy again that I told you about. And I saw him talking with Breccia, our murder victim. He came by. I caught him. He said, don't call the police on me. But he thinks he's working with Vincenza and spying on him, but we don't think he is. We don't think Vincenza is involved in any of this. But he does give us his name of this German guy who's skulking around. Theo Schaefer. Which gets mentioned, doesn't it, by... Where does our wine kid tell us who normally comes by? Here. He says, is it Schaefer, the normal guy that comes from the embassy? And he says, no, it's the other weird guy. Normally they send Schaefer. I prefer the new guy. This guy says the guy who is skulking around is Schaefer, an assistant secretary at the German embassy. He says he was a good friend, and he's shocked when we tell him he died. He says where they met, and he says this can't be my fault, so he definitely feels guilty about it. He was truly in a state of distress. And he does want to hide out there. All right, let's check in with the chat and see if we can make some sense about this. Marlene says, I think there's a clue with the description of the wine bottle. This is my brother is what it means. So mio fratello means brother. My brother, I'm afraid you may not hear from me for some time. You will receive word from me soon. This will lead you to K. So I think maybe what's happened here is Alfonso Breccia, the glassblower, has realized that his cover is blown and he's in danger, and he's preparing to flee. He's written a note to someone and a note to Kay, but he never got a chance to deliver them before he was caught by the bad guys and tortured and killed. And Kay is his informant. And this is probably was going to be a note to our agent, his friend. Although he's already sent him some information, so maybe not. I'm not sure. Okay, so this guy is not a bad guy. He's the normal German embassy guy. But there's a new guy that's coming around who's walks weird and is organizing all this purchasing of wine and delivering it. And perhaps this guy, the Jaw, is the Jaw another name for any? Is the Jaw a name that could be associated in German with Klein, Wilhelm Klein? I wonder, can someone tell me what jaw is in Italian to see if it's some sort of play on words? And then perhaps Carl Vetter is the person who our guy is our contact here. And then we were told in the first letter about the anarchists with bombs. Look at this. This is in our first letter. Earlier this year, information led to the arrest of an anarchist in Corcamo who was returning to his lodgings while carrying a large number of explosives. So I think the plan was to blow these people up using these glass ampules and or poison them with this glass, and that the person who commissioned this glass is involved in the planning, Wilhelm Klein, is planning this explosion or poisoning that will trigger on music, and that we've got an informant who let our guy know. Jaw is Mascella. Do we have a Mascella name? Not really. Not that I can remember. Sweet aroma. I wonder what that sweet aroma is. Okay, and so our guy tried to warn everyone about their lives being in danger from the explosion or poison wine ampules, but he was caught before he could go underground. And this guy who's searching around for him, Schaefer, was helping our guy, is not a bad guy. Surely not. He wouldn't be acting this way if he was. So he must have been working with our guy. Now, where's my note about Joe? I want to write that down. And then a question is, so we've got two main questions as I see them, and maybe more that I haven't thought about. One is what these letters spell. And then the second question is this odd bottle of wine, if it's true that the 294 is significant. What is up with this Tue Novo Fiore? And I suppose another question is, who is the K? Now, where have I left out the jaw? Why can I not find the jaw part? Probably because I filed these letters in the wrong order. I guess I should fix that. So he's commissioned to make glass that's going to be used as a tool to do an assassination attempt or terrorist attack. He figures it out. He tries to contact. He gets discovered and he goes on the run. They catch him. They destroy the ampules. But he does manage to warn his friends ahead of time so that so that the people aren't killed. So there's our trying to recreate German Embassy, Covent Garden. You got his ampules here. And then on this page, is there anything we marked up? Concert. Eclairs. I assume they're having wine here, right? And the former was deeply offended and angry. Mr. William, who was paying for the musical performance. I wonder if this guy is angry because they're not going to be able to go through with their terrorist attack. All right, let's see if the chat has figured anything out yet. Marlene says, I think the 294 frequency will only work on the certain wine. So you think the 294 is the frequency that they would use to trigger the explosions, the ampules breaking. It might be useful to know if, remember, the ampules broke when this guy was listening to a Dvorak piece at the end of it. If that theory is right, we might expect that if the ampules broke, 3 of them shattered of their own accord. So they go off at different frequencies, I guess. But you might expect that the Dvorak from the New World has some 294 frequencies at the end, but it's only some of them. So they're all set to go off at different frequencies. I'm not sure if that's important. I don't understand what this sweet smell would be. Why do they have any smell in them? All right, and any theories about these letters? I mean, I see the word father. What would it be saying? It's a secret message from our guy to his friend. It might be giving the name of his contact. I don't see a K in there though. But you might expect it would be the name of one of our people that's his informant. Orso, head. It's all in a random order, so we shouldn't expect to be able to read it in order. But I'm not sure what it says. Rob sees Theo's name. Theo. Okay. I would believe that. This is the guy, Theo Schaefer, who we think is his friend. So let's see if this is the contact. Theo Schaefer, huh? Theoschafer. Absolutely, I see Theo Schaefer, although I do see two O's. So it's not just saying Theo Schaefer, but that seems pretty convincing. And there's some letters that we don't have, like the D. Theo Schaefer. And there's no D. There's a leftover D, leftover O. But remember that these are only partial letters. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, only half the ampules have broken. It wouldn't be crazy that his message is trust Theo Schaefer. You know, he's the good guy. He's my informant. Okay. Well, I think since we're an hour and 20 minutes here, the thing to do is to stop here. I think we've got some pretty reasonable theories of what's happening, the basic broad strokes, but there are some details still to figure out, especially with that note. Although I think Rob makes a compelling case that it's Theo Schaefer. There's still a little bit that I'm not quite sure about. Like, is there a good person in the embassy and a bad person in the embassy? And Theo Schaefer is our good person in the embassy that has given us the inside information, and the bad person is trying to arrange this political terrorist assassination. But what we'll do is, in the next week, if people want to stop by the Discord and discuss theories, try to work out that code. Maybe thematically, remember that the next letter that we're going to get in a week is going to give us the solution from Holmes. But maybe thematically, what we should give ourselves the task of doing offline in the Discord and talking about next week, and you might want to think about in the intervening week, is I think that next week, before we read the final letter, we should come up with what we would warn the Italian ambassador to do. Like, go arrest this person, bring this person into a safe house. So that's my request for the audience. Next week, we're going to read the solution. But before we read the solution, we're going to try to come up with some advice we would give to the Italian ambassador of who to arrest and who to bring into a safe house and talk to. So that's what we'll try to get right. Who's the bad guy? Who's the good guy here? All right. For the rest of you, there'll be videos out this week, spoiler-free reviews of most of the games we've played over the last month or so, some positive, some negative. And then no live streams this week, but I will see you on Sunday for the final wrap-up of Dear Holmes, and then we'll have a little bit of time to double down on our live streams before Gen Con. If you are going to Gen Con, let me know. I'll see you in the Discord or on the Board Game Geek Guild. Thanks again for joining me. Thanks for all the help. It's almost wrapped up. Almost wrapped up. Think about who you want to arrest, who you want to bring to a safe house. I'll see you next time.